And we're back. So we're going to pick up right now with our organizational meeting. I call to order the January 9th, 2023 organizational meeting of the Cincinnati Board of Education. I will ask Ms. Wagner to again call our roll, please.
Ms. Bolton?
Present.
Mr. Craig?
Here.
Ms. Jones?
Here.
Dr. Moffitt?
Here.
Mr. Morosky?
Here.
Mrs. Weinberg?
Here.
President Lindy?
Here. So as folks are looking at this agenda, the first item after our call to order is election of president, followed by president's message, election of vice president's message, our organizational appointments, and then a final resolution. So we will move to item B. And at this point, we will take any nominations for school board president. Mr. Craig?
I nominate our current president, President Lindy, to be our new president for this year.
Thank you, Mr. Craig. Are there any other nominations for president? Hearing none, we have one nomination. Ms. Wagner, would you call the vote, please? So we'll see if there's a second for Mr. Craig's motion.
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Weinberg. Any discussion? Absent any discussion, Ms. Wagner, would you now call the vote, please?
Ms. Bolton?
Aye.
Mr. Craig?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Dr. Moffitt? Mr. Morosky?
Yes.
Mrs. Weinberg?
Yes.
President Lindy?
Yes. Thank you all very much. We're moving to the oath of office from Ms. Wagner.
Okay, so if you'll raise your right hand, if you can, and repeat after me. I state your name, do solemnly swear
I, Ben Lindy, do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Ohio,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Ohio,
and that I will faithfully, honestly, and impartially
and that I will faithfully, honestly, and impartially
discharge the duties of President of the Board of Education
discharge the duties of the President of the Board of Education
of the Cincinnati City School District
of the Cincinnati City School District
of the City of Cincinnati, Ohio, during my continuance in office.
of the City of Cincinnati, Ohio, during my continuance in office.
Congratulations.
Okay, moving on to item C. In an effort to just move us along and get folks home as early as we can, I'm going to be very brief and just say thank you to all of you for the chance to serve as board president again this year. I could not be prouder of the work that this group did in the past year, and I look forward to doing important work together in the year ahead. And with that, we're going to keep moving. So next item on the agenda, we have the election of a vice president. Are there any nominations for election of vice president? Mr. Morosky.
I'll nominate Dr. Moffitt.
Thank you, Mr. Morosky. Do we have any other nominations for Vice President? Vice President Jones.
I nominate Brandon Craig.
Thank you, Vice President Jones. So we have two nominations. Do we have any other nominations? Okay, hearing none. In the past, what we have done, if candidates would like, is give everyone a chance to say something if they would like to. Nobody needs to, but if they would like to, we can give Dr. Moffitt a chance and Mr. Craig a chance. Dr. Moffitt, as you were nominated first, is there anything you'd like to share?
So I would just kind of share a little bit about why I'm running for vice president and then conclude. So I'll try to be brief. I wrote it down so I won't ramble. So forgive me if I'm reading. So I'm running for vice president of the Cincinnati Public School Board of Education to continue to connect the community to the district and our school board. My platform during my campaign included increasing community awareness and engagement with Cincinnati Public to support our students, families, and communities. As a former LSDMC chair at Withrow High School and former PTA co-president and community leader within a variety of Cincinnati organizations, I'm committed to and connected within the community and understand the value of community engagement with the board. During my first year on the school board, I've been diligently working to learn from my colleagues, grow my knowledge and skill set, and build upon my foundation as an effective school board member. I was able to tour every CPS school, engage with principals, students, and staff. I applied for and was accepted into the Council of Great City Schools Effective School Board Member cohort, where I was partnered with seasoned school board members from San Francisco, Boston, whose member only spoke a little bit of English, Seattle, and Idaho. My cohort presented a capstone project on effectively engaging those unengaged with a focus on diverse populations and non-English speaking families. I learned from every cohort member how to engage the communities that we serve and work with fellow board members during times of conflict, confusion, and community unrest. It was a great learning experience. In my effort to better understand school finance and pass this knowledge on to the community, I applied for and was accepted into the Georgetown University Education Finance Certificate Program alongside our treasurer, Jen Wagner, and her team. I spent an intensive 2-day learning from 100+ cohort members from across Ohio and the U.S. about student-centered financial decisions in education. This has been highly informative, confusing at times, but helpful in my understanding of how our district spends money, makes decisions, and how we can be more effective in our decisions moving forward. I have one last class to attend before receiving my certificate in education finance, and I'm excited. More importantly, I am excited about being able to help our treasurer and her team engage with the community around our district finances by helping to facilitate financial town hall meetings. And the community's feedback has been incredibly positive. This year, I wanted to understand the social emotional needs of our students and be able to provide support, so I signed up and completed the Youth Mental Health First Aid certification from the National Council for Mental Wellbeing. I wanted to learn more and understand how I could support young people both directly and in my role as a board member. This certification helps me understand further the needs of our students, the support needed by our families, and the services needed support from the board level. I was honored to receive recognition from the National Association of Social Workers as the district's elected official of the year. I was honored this year alongside people who I've learned from and look up to at this very moment. I'm very humbled to have been seen as an elected who demonstrates alignment with the values of the association. And I also received recognition from the National Council of Negro Women for outstanding leadership and service. I attended the Ohio School Board Association Annual Capital Conference this year and was able to meet in person finally many school board and district leaders from across Ohio. I asked lots of questions and collected several additional mentors who have embraced my curiosity and challenged me to grow as a school board member and leader in my community. I did not simply attend the conference, I sought out those who could support my curiosity to learn more into my own strengths, and challenge me to grow and get better as a school board member. Quickly after being elected and starting to serve on the school board, it became evident that there was a lot I simply did not know. I've had to learn how to navigate the understanding process, procedures of the board, personalities, and our school system. I am learning that there is no I in the words school board, and I'm always willing to work with and learn from every member of this school board. As I've said before, I will say one more time, I do not come to this seat with my mind completely determined on any issue that we experience together. For 2023, I've been accepted into the School Board Partners cohort, which will begin later this month. Our own board president, Lindy, did participate in this cohort, and I'm happy to participate in an organization that will allow me to learn from other school board members, again, from across the U.S., and help me continue to learn and grow. The role of the vice president of the board is to preside at and conduct board meetings in the absence of the president, and to also coordinate and prepare meeting agendas if needed with the board president and the superintendent. I can support our current president and our superintendent and treasurer, regardless of current perception. I believe that each one of us wants the best for our district, and this is exactly where we all align. While we may not always agree, I have never left a board meeting feeling devalued or disrespected. I continually learn from each of you, and your voices matter to me. I can work with our current superintendent and treasurer as those that report to the board. I believe in Cincinnati Public Schools and see that our future is indeed bright. All of our students have greatness in them, and it is our responsibility as board members to support them with a learning environment that takes their seeds of curiosity and plants them in schools that enable them to grow and be great. While I believe that you cannot go wrong with either of us, I humbly ask for the vote for vice president for the Cincinnati Public School Board.
Thank you very much, Dr. Moffitt. Mr. Craig.
Let me start first by thanking Vice President Jones for the nomination. I don't take lightly the responsibility of being vice president. I know, again, as we experienced earlier this year, or I should say last year, I forget, we're now in 2023 again. The role of the vice president is an important one, especially when there are experiences that come up in our own lives. And so I don't take this responsibility for this position lightly. I wanted to say, again, I'm a proud product of CPS. Came up through Woodford Primary at the time, went to Roseland Condon, and then finished at Walnut Hills High School. I'm a proud Cincinnatian, right? I'm a graduate twice of the University of Cincinnati, both for my undergrad as well as for law school. And I've been a proud civil rights advocate for the last decade of my professional career. And one thing it's taught me is that we all have experiences to bring to the table. We all have ways to bring things to the table. But the most important thing is our ability to work with each other to get things done. That's what I'm totally focused on in this role. I ran for school board to get things done. I ran for school board to make sure that we gave our students a great educational opportunity. And I want to be the vice president to ensure that we're getting things done. We've done so much great things in this first year, and I've learned and listened a lot to everybody. And I will tell folks, my voice comes out when it needs to come out, and it stays in when it doesn't. And I will continue to keep that base going, keep that identity going. But I do think we've spent so much time this first year learning, or as I have, and we, as a board, have done so much work to grow through some of the efforts that I helped be a part of with regard to our governing exercises, as well as some of the ones where I got to sit back and watch other board members take the lead. I think the most important part to being in a vice president role is to ensure that the president's supported, to ensure that the administration has access to good ideas and good information, but also to ensure that we all have a voice in any discussion that we have with leadership. So that's something that I plan to bring. I've worked for nonprofits where we've had to deal with boards, and they're always fun to do. They're always a challenge to do, and so I recognize that and appreciate that. But I've also worked at the district in the past in the general counsel's office where I had to watch the fun of the work that our general counsel does in board meetings. I know that there are so many great things that we can do as a district, and I want to just make sure that we keep doing it. The thing that really inspired me the most to do this, though, is, and I'll talk about it actually a little bit later on today, but there's a gentleman I went to that I've known for more than 20 years of my life now, who recently passed away. And he worked for 36 years in this district. He took and valued every single one of the students in this district that he interacted with. And to go to his funeral today and hear people introduce themselves who were well over my age as one of his former students, that meant so much to them. To hear in his daughter, in the obituary, how his daughters talked about they could never go anywhere where somebody didn't know him, didn't appreciate him. That's what we're here to do. That's why I'm doing this. That's why I want to be the vice president, is because I know that we have so many great teachers just like that in our district, so many great staff members just like that in our district. so many great people and students and parents just like that in our district. And I want to be here to be able to help us as a board and help our newly elected president, Mr. Lindy, be able to deliver for them. So that's, again, I want to keep it a little bit short because as folks know, I don't like to talk a lot here. Other places would not probably agree. But I want to make sure that everybody knows that my passion is really making sure that we build something that works. And that's why I would want to be vice president.
Thank you very much, Mr. Craig. With no other nominations and with both of the nominees having had a chance to offer their remarks, I think I'll ask Ms. Wagner to call the vote. And I imagine what we'll do is a first round of votes for the first nominee, and then a second, if there needs to be a second round of votes for the second nominee. Ms. Bolden has a efficiency win, which is we just go through and everybody says their name of the person they're voting for. That's probably an easier idea.
Okay. Bolton?
Member Craig?
Craig?
Member Craig.
Ms. Jones?
Member Craig?
Dr. Moffitt?
Member Moffitt.
Mr. Morosky?
Dr. Moffitt.
Mrs. Weinberg?
Dr. Moffitt?
President Lindy?
Mr. Craig. Thank you very much. Both our nominees and our board. Congratulations, Mr. Craig. I think we have a change in seating arrangements. So we'll pause for just a brief interlude.
Congratulations, Board Member Craig.
President Lindy? We need an oath.
Yeah, so we'll do an oath for Mr. Craig, and we will also have a change in seating arrangements. Thank you.
Okay, so you'll have to raise your right hand. There you go. And repeat after me. I state your name, do solemnly swear
I, Brandon Craig, do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Ohio,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Ohio,
and that I will faithfully, honestly, and impartially
and that I will faithfully, honestly, and impartially
discharge the duties of Vice President of the Board of Education
discharge the duties of the Vice President of the Board of Education
of the Cincinnati City School District
of the Cincinnati City School District,
of the City of Cincinnati, Ohio, during my continuance in office.
the City of Cincinnati, Ohio, during my continuance in office.
Yes, congratulations.
Welcome to this side.
All right, as we're getting ourselves settled here, please, board members, take your time, and thank you, Phyllis, for your help. I am going to keep moving us along here because we have a full plate this evening. The next part of our organizational meeting, we're on to item F on the agenda, which is Board of Education organization and appointments. And there are at least two big parts to this. The first is deciding on committee composition for 2023. And then there will be a second part where we have other board appointments to different organizations, school board associations, councils, and other pieces. So we're going to start with committees. And I want to, yes, Ms. Jones.
Does the vice president get, he did?
Do you want to say something?
Does he get a message?
Oh, did I skip Mr. Craig? I apologize. Here I am trying to get us through too quickly. You did share a message at the beginning. That's true. Is there anything you'd like to share here on item E?
Just say thank you and let's get to work. Short and sweet.
Thank you, Mr. Craig. Thank you, Ms. Jones, for calling that to my attention.
You're going to miss me sitting there.
I already do. I already do. So we're going to move forward on the committee assignments. And I wanted to start by thanking everybody for sharing their forms and their requests. And then I wanted to share what I have here from people, make sure that I have it right. And what I wanted to propose was that we start, this worked reasonably well last year, is that we start by seeing what would happen if we gave everybody their first choice and see how close that gets us to a workable setup and then work through any remaining issues. I think one piece of just context, this is going to be different from last year because we have a different number of committees. So we have the 3 standing committees, which are finance, policy, and health and safety. We also have an ad hoc committee that is running. And so the ad hoc committee that's focused on attendance boundaries. And so, we will do whatever the majority of us decide is the right thing to do. But as I was trying just to organize the discussion, I thought it could be helpful to think about, with ad hoc, there are 4 committees. 4 committees with 3 seats each gives you 12 seats. We have 6 board members, that's not counting myself, to figure out 12 different seats. So again, we'll do whatever the majority of us decides to do, but it could be helpful to think about everybody sitting in 2 seats on the committees. That would make sure that across the 6 people, we're distributing the workload in a reasonably even way. And again, we can make changes and we'll do whatever the majority decides. Ms. Bolton. Yeah.
Yes, I think that's reasonable. I do want to raise the issue that the ad hoc committee dealing with attendance boundaries and what have you, it was my understanding that perhaps that membership would remain as is, largely because where we are in our development. And that would include Chairman Moffitt and Member Jones and myself. And then I do have an issue I'd like to raise about the Student Achievement and District Instructional Performance Committee before we get to the 3 that are standing committees, if I could.
That's fair. I think I want to lay out a couple other things that I think will help move us forward a little bit. I wanted to share that I share your assumption about the composition of ad hoc. Okay. Again, we'll do whatever the majority of us decide, but my incoming assumption was that people have worked hard. It's not done. They'd like to stay working on that, but again, we'll do whatever the group decides. Yes, Ms. Jones.
Yes, you may have already thought this through. I would suggest as well, I agree with the recommendation that Ms. Bolton brought forward. I also would suggest that when we vote on accepting the organizational structure, that ad hoc not be in the same boat as the standing committees. It is an ad hoc committee. It needs to say that. It has a starting point and an ending point. But if we put it accept it as part of a, quote, standing committee, then we won't have that sort of parameter for it.
I think that's a really good point, and then I agree with you. Makes a lot of sense. And again, we'll do whatever the majority of us decides to do. So what I wanted to do is start by recapping what I have as people's first choices. And so what I have here is that Ms. Bolton's first choice was finance, second choice was policy. That Ms. Jones's first choice was health and safety. That Mr. Murawski's first choice was policy. Vice President Craig's first choice was finance. Dr. Moffitt's first choice was finance. And that Mrs. Weinberg's first choice was health and safety. I had a second choice from Dr. Moffitt, policy, and I had a second choice from Mrs. Weinberg as policy. I wanted to just check, is that right, or did I get any of that incorrect?
That was as written. I'm going to withdraw my name from policy.
Okay. That is helpful. Okay, so I think if we look at that as a starting point, what's guided me in where we've come so far is assuming that ad hoc would continue through its course of work. We try to get close to 2 seats per person. We start with everybody's first choice and see how close that gets us. So that creates a world where assume for a moment that Dr. Moffitt, Ms. Bolton, and Ms. Jones stay on ad hoc. We give Ms. Bolton, Dr. Moffitt, and Mr. Craig their first choice, which was finance. They were the only 3 people who had finance as their first choice. That would put 2 of the committees in pretty good shape. We give Ms. Jones and Mrs. Weinberg their first choice of health and safety. We give Mr. Morosky his first choice of policy. And we're really quite close to being finished. We would need 1 more person on health and safety. We would need 1 more person on policy. Nope, let me back up a second. Mrs. Weinberg's second choice was policy, so we were going to give that to her also, just as a proposal. And that would mean with just giving everybody their first and second choices, ad hoc would stay the same, finance would be there, and we need 1 more person to go to policy, 1 more person to go to health and safety. We have 2 people left. It's Mr. Craig and Mr. Morosky. And so would welcome kind of people's thoughts on this, Mr. Morosky.
We don't need, thank you, President Lindy. We don't need 1 more person on health and safety if we just go by this chart, right? Because it would be former Vice President Jones. Yeah, I like that. Thank you. Member Weinberg and me, right?
Right.
Because health and safety was the only other committee I put my name on, so it's obviously my second choice.
So we would have here, just clarifying that I'm following correctly, a proposed health and safety committee that could be former Vice President Jones, Mrs. Weinberg, and
I'm just board member Jones.
Mike and Mr. Morosky. And that would be if Member Craig would be open to policy as a second seat.
Thought I had said. What happened to?
President Lindy.
Mrs. Weinberg.
Yes. So according to the sheet here, I thought that we had everything fulfilled from the ad hoc to health and safety, and then including with my choices, second for policy and equity, we have the names of Bolton, Morosky, and Weinberg.
Yeah.
So you would have Bolton, Morosky, and Weinberg in policy?
Yes.
Yeah,
that is what's
if
on.
that's what the majority would like, we could certainly do that. That would mean that Ms. Bolton has 3 assignments and Mr. Craig has 1. And that's up to the 2 of them. But I would like to hear from each of them how they feel about that, because that feels important. Yeah, Vice President.
That's fine with me, because part of being on Budget and Finance also means you do the audit committee. I recognize that also requires meetings as well. So.
Delightful meetings, I might say.
So, that's an okay with you. Ms. Bolton, this would be asking you to have more committee seats than anybody else. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Great idea.
I'm shocked. Shocked, I say. Ms. Jones.
Yeah, I just wanted to remind folks that when we dropped the committee, we lost balance. So there's always been 1 person who had 1 extra or 1 additional, and it's usually Ms. Bolton.
So I'm going to read back what I have and check to see that I have this accurately. So the proposal on the table is that ad hoc stay the same, and that will sunset once its work is complete. Finance would be Ms. Bolton, Dr. Moffitt, and Mr. Craig. Policy would be Mr. Morosky, Ms. Weinberg, and Ms. Bolton. Health and safety would be Member Jones, Member Weinberg, and Member Morosky. So I think my first question, is that accurate based on what we were just discussing? Okay. And then I think my second question is, does anybody have any concerns with that as our committee structure for this calendar year? Okay. Hearing none, then I think we'll move on. We're going to, Ms. Bolton.
To raise the issue I started to raise regarding student achievement and instructional performance.
Thank you for reminding me. Yep.
The suggestion, since we've changed that as well as Member Jones has mentioned, where it includes all members, one would assume that certainly the president will be maybe indeed part of that, managing that committee, since all 7 are gathered. But I do think it would make sense, and I hope there's some support for this, that with previous experience too, that perhaps Member Jones could help take the point as one of the liaison with the administration for that. I just think that would be useful for all of us. And I think it's so exciting that all 7 of us will be participating in that committee, and it's so crucial. One of, I think, the great outgrowths of the governance work we've done these last 8 months. I think that's super, but I would also like to suggest that the point person or liaison would also be Member Jones. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Jones, do you have a perspective on this?
I fully support that recommendation, and I would be happy to serve in that capacity. I think one of the things going into this, if it happens that everybody's okay with that, I think for me, partnering with the superintendent around that, since we sort of handed this to her, recognizing that she's responsible and will be held accountable for the student achievement outcomes. I think it's very important to sort of narrow the scope around how she liaisons with the board around that. And rather than have 7 people where folks are wanting to hear different things about different achievement areas, I think having one person to filter through and then being able to sit with her and sort of prioritize kind of where we are with the student achievement agenda would be helpful. So I am in support of that, and I would like to throw my name in there as the liaison.
Thank you, former Vice President Jones. This is a new idea that we've not talked about prior to this meeting. And there's a suggestion from Ms. Bolton, and there's interest in that suggestion from Ms. Jones. I do want to just invite any dissent or any disagreement or any questions, if there are any. I happen not to have any, but if there are others, I want to make sure they get a chance to ask any questions. Mrs. Weinberg.
I don't have any questions, just to say that I would be in full support of that.
Thank you, Mrs. Weinberg. Any other questions or any concerns? Dr. Moffitt?
I think I have a question about it. So are we saying that because this is the student achievement is now under the committee of the whole as a committee, we're having someone other than the board president kind of chair that as a committee? Is that what we're liking it to? Because that's what it sounds like.
Ms. Bolton, I might invite you to share. This was your suggestion. So do you want to share your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it makes sense when they're all 7 of us are gathered to do something important like this. I think the board president is the person that may be running the meeting. And of course, in previous years, if it was associated with Cal, in previous years, the superintendent ran the meeting. So there's that history as well. So the 7, because it's the president, the superintendent, and previous Cals. But I think what we've found in the last few years is that I think we need the experience and the liaison between the board, not necessarily coming through the board president on this topic, but rather a person that's been involved and has seen sort of the strengths and the shortcomings. So I think the liaison or point person for the superintendent would be a good idea. And certainly the president of the board with the superintendent figuring out how to manage the meeting itself as well as bring forth what is needed.
Does that answer your question, Dr. Moffat?
A little bit. I think I'm also just wanting to know how are we structuring that. So if we have questions, do we send that to former Vice President Jones to facilitate that to the board for the student achievement? I think I'm just kind of wanting to understand the process of how we're going to facilitate that since this is a new idea.
Yeah, Ms. Jones.
I would say we haven't decided a process. I'd like I think for the most part, the superintendent, because this is in her performance review, that by all means, she should be the one that sort of oversees this. I think I see this role as really kind of helping to prioritize where the board members' thinking, requests, and all of that. So how do we do that? I don't know yet. I would have to have a conversation with the superintendent, and I would also include our board president as the person who is responsible for the agenda. We would have to figure out how the agenda is prioritized and all that. So it doesn't specifically answer your question because I don't have an answer for that.
I got you. I'm wondering if we need to kind of flush a little bit of that out. I'm not
We will.
opposed to it, but I also don't want us to say, generally speaking, hey, yeah, let's do this, and then there's no process or procedure that's outlined.
Absolutely.
So I think if I have a little bit more clarity, I'm all for it. But I do wonder, the specifics of it. Are we making this a committee with a committee pseudo chair? How does this? If we have questions, do we send them to you? How does that work? So I'm all for it.
Needs to be fleshed out. I agree.
For sure.
Yeah, I think we should, absent folks who would like to vote against it, I think that's a very reasonable set of questions, and that some work could get done and come back after some conversations in a couple of weeks with some proposals. And frankly, we'll probably try that for a little bit. Some of it will work well, some of it will not. We will change it, we'll make it better. I think we can figure that out. So any other last questions about organizations? I recognize we have some speakers who are here for our meeting, but we also have to do our organizational appointments, and I want to try to move through that if we can next. Okay, great. So moving along to the bottom half of the organizational assignments sheet. I think this also came through, I think, in a pretty helpful distribution with everybody. I think what I'm going to try to do is tick off what I hope are some easy ones, and then I think there are only one or two that might be tricky. We don't have anyone currently for the Council of Great City Schools. From my understanding, that is open to any board member who wants to come, regardless of whose name we list here, but we do need one person be the designated person for the board. I am happy to volunteer to do that, but I also wanted to, if any of you would rather do it, I'm very happy to give that spot to somebody else. Is there anyone who would like to do that? Mr. Craig?
Yeah, I would be happy to do it.
Great. Is there anybody who would like to throw down with Mr. Craig for the Council of Great City Schools position? Hearing none, we're going to give that to Mr. Craig. Okay, other one was the OSBA cabinet position. That was another one that was blank. Same story. I'm very happy to do that if that would be helpful. If there is someone here who really would like to do that, it's currently open. And I wanted to see if anybody would rather do it instead of me. Yeah, Ms. Jones.
I currently am serving as the on the Southwest Region Committee. I believe that is term limited, and I believe they just named. That's not necessarily a given for us. It's offered to anybody in the Southwest region. And
so we don't need somebody on that one?
No, not at this time. It will come out in an announcement when that person's term is up. And I believe they just started last year.
Great. So this will.
It's not Cincinnati, so.
That's great. Let's not create more work for ourselves. I just wanted to offer if that's helpful for everybody. Okay, so then I think a couple others here that seem pretty straightforward. Ms. Bolton put her name in for the OSBA conference role unopposed. Ms. Jones for OSBA executive and the OSBA legislative liaison. We have Dr. Moffitt for the DEI committee for OSBA, for the Student Achievement Committee for OSBA, and for the Effectiveness Advisory Council. I really like that group because that was my very first year on the board. That was my assignment. And all of those seemed unopposed. I just wanted to check. I think we should just go with those unless anybody has any concerns. Okay, so that gets everything done except for 2. And the 2 that are left are ABC, Activities Beyond the Classroom, and CRC, Cincinnati Recreation Commission. If we start, Mrs. Weinberg.
I think you forgot to name me for the Ohio High School Athletic Association. I didn't hear my name for that.
You know, I don't have
I just
that on
wanted
my
to make
list.
sure that you
Is
still
that,
had me down.
It's under student
It's on the
achievement.
list.
You know, I just missed it, Ms. Weinberg, and
It's
that's my
okay.
mistake. So let's add that. I have you here now. Thank you for raising that. Any other mistakes I've made? Ms. Bolton?
No mistakes,
No
ever.
mistakes.
Ever. But I will say that in the past, there have been 3 people for ABC.
Well, that takes that
unless-
off the list of concerns. Is there any, Ms. Jones?
I still wonder why we need 3. I don't know. If
It's a
folks
question.
voted on that, but I don't know why we need 3 representatives for ABC. I think we said okay to 3 because we couldn't get people to say they drop out of
Drop
it.
out.
I can't imagine. So
Make it a little tough.
yeah. So we do, the 2 that are on the table here are ABC and CRC. And let's just maybe stick on ABC for a second. Is there anybody, so currently we have the people who put their name in were Ms. Bolton, Mr. Craig, and Mrs. Weinberg. Is there anyone who'd be willing to bow out of that? Excuse me, Mrs. Weinberg? Anybody else? Thank you. So if we just go with, we had 3 and now we're moving to 2. That feels like even more coordination. So anybody opposed enough to 2 that they would like to advocate further that we go down to 1? Otherwise, I think we just stick with 2. Okay, so we have ABC taken care of. That leaves us with our last one, which is CRC. And we have both Mr. Morosky and Mrs. Weinberg. I'm coming to you without a really clear plan of what to do, just to give each of you a chance to say anything you'd like to share and see where we are. Mrs. Weinberg.
So I'm actually going to go ahead and remove my name. I kind of thought about it as I was sitting up here. And Mr. Morosky, I know that you received the vice president role just in May. And I know that, being a year on a board, sometimes it's a learning process, and I do want to give you another opportunity to do a second year, and then I will be back. So just to let you know that.
Thank you, Mrs. Weinberg. Mr. Morosky, anything you would like to share?
Oh, thank you. I would just that I appreciate that, Member Weinberg. It's an awesome role, one that I hope you all know how seriously I take it. Being appointed vice president or elected vice president was quite an honor. And there's a lot going on this year. We're going to continue to shore up what an MOU might look like between individual school sites and CRCs, looking at the campus idea as we talk about in policy a lot, with schools like Ethel M. Taylor, for example, that essentially share space with a rec center. So it should be a good big year for all of us. So, but again, thanks, Ms. Weinberg. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Morosky. So I think if I have where we are correctly, we're now moving on to item G, which is a resolution here. Just coming up. And I need a motion, please, to accept a resolution to approve the 2023 organizational meeting business items for the Cincinnati Board of Education.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Morosky. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Bolton. Do we have any discussion of the motion? Hearing none, Ms. Wagner, would you call the vote, please?
Ms. Bolton?
Aye.
Mr. Craig?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Dr. Moffitt?
Yes.
Mr. Morosky?
Yes.
Mrs. Weinberg? President Lindy.
Yes. Thank you, everyone. Having no other organizational meeting items before us, I'm going to adjourn just this meeting, but stay tuned. We'll be back in a moment for our business meeting.